Good afternoon and welcome to Standpoint. I am Veronica Danik-Boy. Nigeria's Democracy Day, May the 29th, has come and gone, but Nigerians are still celebrating the achievements of 19 years of democratic rule without a military incursion. In the past, the military lurked in the shadows and stepped into governance at the slightest sign of political instability. Democracy, however, returned to Nigeria in 1999 after the death of military dictator General Sani Abacha. This was after 16 years of military rule that featured General Muhammadu Buhari, General Ibrahim Babangida, and of course, Abacha. Olusegun Obasanjo was the man elected in 1999 to correct the ills of 16 years of military rule. 19 years after, is Nigeria better for it or is it worse off? With me in the studio is a 2019 presidential aspirant of the Kowa Party, Remi Shonaya. Also in the studio is a lawyer and social commentator, Adebayo Ibrahim Razak. Thank you for coming on the program. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, too.
All right. Ordinarily, our Democracy Day should be a day of national pride and joy for a country that is blessed in abundance with all that it needs to excel and dominate. But that's not the case. Nigeria remains underdeveloped, a giant wobbling on broken limbs. Things like tribe and religion still divide us and set us on a warring path. Last year, calls for cessation and restructuring were so loud that many feared for the unity of the nation. How strong is our democracy? After 19 years, is Nigeria where she's supposed to be? Have we measured up to democratic standards? I'll start with you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here again. And I would like to really congratulate all of us for these 19 years. You know, yes, you said, like you said, you know, wobbling and almost falling into the precipice and so on. But hey, here we are. We did not have the military, incursion again and so on. So it gives us some room for celebration. However, we are nowhere near where we ought to be. It's like our hearts are constantly in our mouths, you know. Is this democracy going to really survive? You know, like you said, last year it was as if, this country was going to be, fractured. It was going to, go down that precipice that had long been predicted for us. So we are not where we are supposed to be. And indeed, that's the general sense that is prevalent among the people. Some opinion polls were taken. There was one published by the Tribune. There's the Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, polls, and the general consensus is one of no. This is not where we are supposed to be. This is specifically with respect to the last elections. This is not the change that we voted for.
All right, we'll come to the aspect of change later on, but then let me bring in Adebayo in now. 19 years. Do you share the same view as regards we are not yet where we're supposed to be, or is it that we are not yet matured enough?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. 19 years of our democracy, and the question is that what is the level of satisfaction that an average Nigerian out there has? We're not talking about certain Nigerians who have benefited or who are in the mix of the politic in itself, but we are talking about an average Nigerian on the streets. And when we look at democracy itself, 19 years is a lot of time. And I believe strongly that while we've made a lot of efforts from where we started from 1999 and up to this point where we are today, we're still struggling with a lot of teething problems in the democracy and the politics of Nigeria.
What are these problems?
Well, for me personally, I think strongly that the democracy that we are practicing in Nigeria is yet to express itself as government of the people, by the people and for the people.
Is it for, so, okay, go ahead.
And that is where the real problem is, that the political parties are yet to come into the full understanding of why they exist within a democratic space. That political parties don't exist for themselves, they do exist for the people. And that's why they've been given a lot of leverages in the Constitution, even as far as giving them some level of funding when it comes to electioneering and the rest of it. Don't forget, it's taxpayers' money. And so if the Constitution allows the funding of political parties by taxpayers' money, then political parties must come to a quick understanding of what their responsibility is to the people, not to themselves. Political parties must understand strongly that what they should be chasing in democracy is governance, not power. And that's where I come to that conclusion that even though we've come a long way, we are still far away, very, very far away from our destination as the giant of Africa that we ought to be. Professor Lumumba says, if Africa must be great, then Nigeria must be great, because the greatness of Africa rests strongly on the greatness of this country, Nigeria. And if Nigeria fails to be great, then it's almost impossible for Africa to be great. As the most populous black nation in the world, Nigeria owes the responsibility not only to herself, but to the African continent to get things right and to be great as soon as possible.
Oh, you want to contribute?
Yes,
to what
I wanted to just take off up something that you know, on an idea there. In terms of democracy, it seems that even we lower our own expectations. And one word that is often used with, you know, our democracy in Nigeria is the word nascent. We constantly talk about our nascent democracy.
The president mentioned it
exactly
in his speech, and there's
nascent
been several
means
reactions to
it's
that.
something that is being born, you know. It's so the question is, how long is it going to take for our democracy to be born? In how long are we going to stay in this nascent stage, you know? So it also...
Does that reflect our mind?
Yes.
The state of our mind concerning democracy? Does it show that we really do not believe or understand what we are doing?
Exactly. We don't have great expectations. And that is why, you know, what takes other countries a short period of time to accomplish tends to take us, you know, much, much longer. We hear, we read, we see, you know, other countries making like, you know, quantum leaps.
Yeah.
Here we are still telling ourselves, you know, our democracy is just still being born, you know. And,
Even after 19 years.
Even after 19 years. You know, how long did it take, you know, the United Arab Emirates to transform itself? How long did it take, you know, China to come, you know, so strongly upon the global stage like this? You know, why are our expectations so low? You know, we can talk about that too, but I just wanted to check that.
So you could tell us why our expectations is so low?
I believe that fundamentally, therefore, there does not seem to be a good understanding of what democracy is. That is, you know, it's the equality of all the people. A major challenge to our democracy, I believe, is this sense of entitlement by maybe what you might call the political class. It's like, you know, they feel that they own this country, they have a right to its resources and so on, more than the rest of us.
It's about ideology, their ideology, political class and their ideology, and not really about we not understanding what this really is. And if that is a challenge, why are we not dealing with this head on?
Let me add to what she said. There's this common practice in Nigerian democratic landscape where we compare political dispensations to one another, and we do a comparative analysis. and we say, for example, this government has done better than this government. But there is a school of thought which I belong to, which is qualitative. And what we do is an impact assessment of how the government has impacted the life of the citizens directly, the life of the ordinary citizen. And we don't believe that comparing one incompetent government to another incompetent government and then classifying one of the incompetent based on the performance more than another incompetent makes an incompetent government a good government. So if you compare bad with bad, you don't suddenly choose one bad to be good, which is very important that the general public understands. Another responsibility that the people do have is to open their mind and to understand that in democracy, whatever they get is a right, not a privilege. Because we do have people that do not understand that the highest office in the land is the office of the citizen. And so whatever they are getting out of democracy, they believe strongly that it is a privilege that they are having. And so for us personally, the first thing that the people have to understand is that in democratic practice, that they have one of the greatest responsibility. Because Nigeria must transform itself from where we classify the people as masses to being citizen. There's a very big difference between a masses and a citizen.
What's the difference?
The difference is patriotism. An average Nigerian must know that for you to be a citizen, you have to have the real interest of the country that you exist in. And when the interest of the country becomes priority, then we stop building individual within the political clan and start building institution, because individuals cannot develop political ideologies. It is in human nature to have interest. Individuals' interest would always be personal. But when we move from where we see ourselves as masses, as just numbers, to when we get to ourselves as citizens, to become a force to reckon with within the democratic space, then we take ownership of the political parties, because the political parties do actually belong to the people. And that is why the Constitution clearly points towards that the political parties, if political parties belong to individuals, not the people, then you will find no space in the Constitution.
But like, you know, some political parties are being held by certain people.
Certainly not COA party.
It is being held by certain people because when you look at how it is, the process of choosing candidates, which is something that people have talked about, it is not necessarily what the masses want most of the time that you see, that the candidates that is being brought out most of the time, because certain people determine who becomes the candidate, who becomes an aspirant. But then you want to say something.
And I believe that, you know, these are part of the challenges.
And I asked the question, why are we not challenging? We know these things. Why are we not dealing with it head on?
Well, we are dealing with it.
COA party?
COA party. You know, but the contradictory thing about our situation, you know, is that many people would say, sure, the big parties they are not running a democratic system, you know, they're not doing what even their own members, you know, desire. And that's why their congresses and meetings and so on are so fraught with violence. All right. So on the one hand, the people recognize that what is going on in the big parties is not what
is there a big party? Is there a small party? A party is a party. Why call them a big and small?
They call parties like COA parties small parties.
Why is that?
Because we don't have the large numbers. Even, you know, like you mentioned earlier when we were talking, you don't see us out there. The media is fixated, it seems, on these two parties. They are the major players. However, people who recognize that what is going on in these parties is abnormal, should they not seek either to change those parties? Why do they remain there? That is the reason that I chose a different kind of party, because I believe that we in Nigeria, we deserve to have a party that is run, according to the global standards. All this violence and so on that you see because of the contest for position. Only God knows what will come, what the story truly is behind the shooting of Mr. Opeyemi Bamidele yesterday in Ekiti. So what is going on? We are saying, let us give ourselves parties that truly are democratic. If
and reflect the voice of the people.
That reflect the voice of the people. If my party were not so, I would not be sitting here today, definitely as the candidate of the party.
An aspirant?
No, I mean a former candidate and currently an aspirant.
All right, now we'll quickly take a short break and the discussion continues when we return. Stay with us.
APC has identified 3 fundamental problems that have to be tackled immediately. 1, insecurity. 2, the destruction of the economy. 3, bribery and corruption. Previous speakers have commented on this separately, but I would like to draw your attention that whatever we are going to do, we have to secure Nigeria first. What is happening in the northeast, where hundreds of people are being killed, is not acceptable.
That was President Buhari promising to fix Nigeria's many problems during election campaign in Lagos in 2015. Fast forward 3 years later, have those promises been fulfilled? Well, the president scored himself high while addressing Nigerians on Democracy Day.
Before this administration came into being 3 years ago, Boko Haram held large areas of land spanning several local governments in the northeast. Today, the capacity of the insurgents has been degraded, leading to the re-establishment of authority of government and the release of captives, including happily 106 Chibok and 104 deputy guards and over 16,000 other persons held by Boko Haram.
All right, well, the president rode on to power on the promises of changing certain narratives, which was mentioned earlier, the economy, security, and to fight corruption. Would you say that this administration has delivered on those promises?
It would be difficult to say a direct yes that the administration has delivered. There's no doubt that some efforts have some efforts have been made, and some positive results obtained in certain areas. Some relatively positive results. For instance, in terms of security, it is true that Boko Haram has been downgraded significantly, it would seem.
Seem? You said it would seem.
Yeah, because we still have certain cases of bombings and things like that happening from time to time. But what I was going to say is that unfortunately, with the going down, the maybe presumed or apparent downgrading of Boko Haram, what we have seen is an upsurge in terms of herdsmen attacks. So we are still very much a people that lacks security. So in terms of security, we cannot say that we can score the president high or this administration high. We know for sure that there are still many, many people in captivity, and the government seems to be incapable of getting them freed quickly. It will soon be 4 years of the, it is already 4 years of the Chibok girls.
But the release of some of the girls, we got
yes,
over 100.
Just imagine that you are the mother of the ones that have not yet been released. What does that say to you about your country? There's a sense in which you feel sort of abandoned.
But the government says it made certain efforts to ensure that it got some of the girls released.
Nobody is doubting, the effort. But the question is, how come that a country with all the resources available, to it, a country like Nigeria, is at a loss, is so hampered, and cannot really, one almost imagines like a swooping in and, just rescuing those girls, especially the young ones. How is Elia Sharibu, and by the way, she wasn't even mentioned in the president's speech. How is Elia Sharibu supposed to be feeling right now? So in any case, it is for the people to score the government. All these, successive governments scoring themselves highly and so on. You cannot be the judge in your own case. You can't be the
but sometimes you have to blow your own trumpet to let people know what efforts you are making.
But what is the reality? Why are our people, in fact, I took some time to really look at some of the basic steps that the government has taken to address several of the issues confronting us in terms of the economy, security, corruption, and so on. And it does appear that, there are a lot of activities. The question is, why are the people still discontent? Because that is the reality. Whether you go out on the streets and ask people by yourselves, or what you hear around you, or what we hear, from the polls that have been conducted, the reality is that people, the majority of people, are not happy. So if you are making such, efforts and you believe that you are getting results, why are your people not happy? But your people, they would recognize good results when they see them.
But then, the government, came on the mantra of change. And like it said, it met so much on ground. And so it is still making efforts, even in this 3 years, to change certain changes it met on ground. Yeah. Possibly, could that be the reason, like she said, now some Nigerians are still not happy? Is that the reason why they are not feeling the impact because of what they met on ground? Or what is your scorecard for the administration?
Well, on the current administration, I would say that in certain areas, they've done well, but there's room for improvement, which is important to say. Now, for example, if you look at diversifying the economy, and you look at the diversification of the economy from the point of agriculture, you would say that this government has done really well. And to know that the most common meal of every Nigeria, which is rice, is now less imported and not more grown in Nigeria, then you would agree with me that truly in the area of agriculture, talking about the economy, this country, the current government has done well. There's no doubt that they've met a barrage of problems on ground that has accumulated over the years. And the truth is that the first thing that has to be done when you come into office meeting those kind of problems is housekeeping. And the government has been doing a lot of housekeeping. Now, if you look at the economy, how they've moved the economy from recession to where it is now, you would also agree that the government has done well. We've seen more international partnership and trade in terms of the economy. We've also seen that in terms of empowerment, and when we talk about empowerment, we're looking at economic empowerment. We've also seen that the government has done quite a lot in terms with the Empower project and a few other things that is ongoing. However, when we talk about need for improvement, we cannot excuse the area of security. And I come back to that consciously, not because the government is not spending on security, not because our beloved army is not working assiduously to cure the security crisis that we have, but because that personally I believe strongly that there must be an institutional solution to the security problems that we have in Nigeria.
When you say institutional solution, how do you mean?
For example, addressing the security issue must take two measures: intelligent and physical solution. We know that physically we have the armies on ground and they are doing a lot, and we appreciate them for the sacrifice that they are making for the beloved country. However, the government must make critical and conscious effort to unravel the mystery of insecurity in Nigeria, because insecurity happens to be something that has been metamorphosizing in different ways over the period. From the Boko Haram, from the militancy issue, to the Boko Haram, to the herdsmen, and let's not forget the ethnic and religious crisis which comes in and out. We want to know, we really are interested, who is behind this? Person, countries, institution, where's the funding coming from? Where's the network coming from? Within and outside. I mean, Al-Qaeda and the rest of them that are global issues in terms of security, they do have an identity that is known, that has been unraveled by successive governments either in America or in Europe or even in the Middle East. In Nigeria, we can't seem to identify one individual that we can say, look, the resources that these people are using to create this level of insecurity, loss of lives and property, where is it coming from? Is it going through the banks? Is it hard cash currency coming in through the border? Is it money laundered into the country? Where's the money coming from? Where's the intelligence network that these people are operating with? Where's the support coming from? How is this syndicate excelling in this level of insecurity? And that's why, for me, I believe strongly that it's beyond spending money on weapons. It's beyond buying choppers or tanks. Okay. The government has to get on ground to unravel the intelligence in the insecurity of this country.
All right, quickly, before we move on, we have Adebayo calling from Ogun State. Go ahead with your contribution. Bayo, are you there?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, 3 years after Buhari's administration. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. I love his administration because his first military engagement in the 84 before the military school was very, very enjoyable. So, but I think he made a slight mistake. When you come in as a leader, you have to gather the people together. Don't have to be partial. Don't have to gather some people from your ethnic group and you abandon the others. He forgot the people that followed him to conquer the election. So and these people you gather together and put as personal something, eventually sabotage the government. So look at the secretary to the government, the federal government of the federation. Look at some of them. They are not. They are just a call of embarrassment to him. So I believe he had a very good intention for the nation. He's very, very plain, non-corrupt official. I love him. I'm from Ogun State. I'm not from Katsina State.
Thank you, Adebayo, for your contribution. Yes, you want to say something?
Yes, I'd like to follow up on some of the ideas that have been expressed. In terms of security, I think part of the problem is that one really expected a lot more from President Buhari being a general. One expected that, you know, some of the issues that my colleague here has been raising and things like this should be basic issues for somebody with a military background. So this level of helplessness that is being displayed is all the more troubling because of his military background. And I would like to say that, you know, for people, in terms of how they feel about their governments, is basically based on, do they feel secure? Security. Secondly, how much money do they have in their pockets? Yeah. Thirdly, do they have a sense that their government really cares for them across the board without favoring, you know, maybe one sector or over the other. And I think these are the areas where Nigerians score the president low. For instance, in terms of the third point that I made, he goes out and gets treatment, you know, for himself abroad.
All right, if you could just hold the thought, we have Lanre on the line calling from. Lanre, go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, 3 years after Buhari's administration, I think we are making the huge progress. Though we are not where we're supposed to be, but we're making a progress. And according to what Auntie Remi said, I was just part of when she said, according to so many polls that Buhari, people are really not happy with Buhari. In the last few days, actually from May 29, there are a lot of polls that have come up on social media. And the president has really been getting a lot of support from Nigerians. And I think if Auntie Remi can also do the same poll on our own and do, let's see what's going to happen. And talking about the president's achievement, I think he has done well in terms of infrastructure. We know what's happening across the country. He's trying to use the air power to make the youth busy. Also, he's doing a lot of things in terms of the homegrown school feeding, which is already being felt in 24 states of the federation. So what I think the president just needs to do is for him to just wake up and try to be more dictatorial. That's what I call it, because someone of us voted him in because he wants him to be dictatorial in his senate, but he's not really.
All right, thank you, Larry, for your contribution. Being dictatorial,
well, I mean, let's look at it from this point of view, just simply saying, what is the minimum wage in the country as we speak today? Mm-hmm. And so we're looking at the purchasing power of an average Nigerian and comparing it to the earning power of an average Nigerian. So if we say, for example, the average earning power in the public sector is 18,000 naira, and in the private sector, perhaps 50,000 naira, and then you multiply that 18,000 by 12, you probably be getting something around 216,000 naira a year in terms of take-home. Now, if you now consider it, if someone earns 216,000 naira in a year, what is the cost of living per day, 365 days? So that means that commonsensically, an average Nigeria might need to live on less than 1,000 naira.
But there are plans in place for the talks about increment.
Yes, and that's why some of the things that we encourage to be done speedily is the consideration of the increase in that minimum wage from 18,000 naira to the proposed or to the agreed 56,000 naira monthly. Because even though that would not be totally sufficient, but
of course,
it would raise the level of standard of living of Nigerians to a reasonable extent. And I believe that the president has done a lot. The government on ground now has really done a lot. But when you smell the cooking and you know that It smells really nice. You can't wait to taste the actual food. And Nigerians are getting hungrier. Now, don't forget that the political culture has changed with social media and information.
Of course, a lot has changed.
So now, democracy has to meet up. The government has to meet up.
The question of if this administration has been able to entrench democracy will come up when we return from the break. Stay with us. All right, you're still watching Standpoint. And before we move to the next topic, we're still looking at 3 years of President Buhari's administration. Another thing that, before we forget, because that is very crucial, is the fight against corruption, which the president hammered on seriously. How would you evaluate the president's fight against corruption, especially looking at the policies that the government has put in place so far, the whistleblower policy that has recovered about 500 million naira, and then we look at the Treasury single account and also the EFCC's efforts so far, and also the tracing of assets globally.
Yeah, and even you know, ease of doing business, efforts and so on. I think one must be fair and acknowledge that a certain degree of success has attended the efforts of the present administration in fighting corruption. What one would like to see, however, is an across-the-board pursuit, if one could say, of all cases of corruption. You know that there are, suggestions that there are certain people that are close to the president himself, who
but hasn't that
have allegations
hasn't
against
that
them.
Allegations being dealt with, looking at the fact that a former governor of Kaduna State recently has Ramalan Iyero, has been asked.
Yeah, so it's happening. That's why I said a further. All right. So let us not rest on our oars and say, okay, so things are fine. What I would like to suggest to Nigerians is that we not be so easily satisfied. I think we are just too, we are very understanding. Oh, he's making progress. We are advancing and so on. At what speed are you advancing? How quickly are you advancing? The fact of the matter is that the rest of the world is advancing fast. Take, issue of even, infrastructure, and people say, oh, we've made progress in infrastructure development and so on. Countries that start building roads, that start building, railways and things like that, far after we have started our own, how long is the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway going to take us to be finished? So these are some of the issues. The expressway going to Badagry, it's been giving people horrors, for years now. So why are we not more demanding? Why are we so easily satisfied? That is part of the challenge that I would like to throw to Nigerians. Every single day of bearing with, pothole reading roads and things like that, that's our lives that are going, and we must recognize it. We are living a substandard kind of, lives. And it should not be. We should be, if I could use that expression, more in a hurry. We should be more in a hurry.
All right.
Speaking about the president's corruption campaign, personally, I would score him high. The reason why I would score him high, the first thing that we have to understand is this is the commonwealth of everybody, of every Nigerian that has been taken by people that we've entrusted with governance. And if it's been recovered, personally, I am glad that this is happening. However, where an extra step must be taken, from my own personal perspective, is that even though we have people that had come forward to do a plea bargain, so, okay, look, I've taken so amount of money, and I'm coming forward to say, okay, look, this is what I have left out of that money that I've taken, and I'm willing to return this, and they are forgiven, and they are absorbed back into the society. Let's not forget that the fight against corruption cannot afford to be political in any way. It must be an institutional fight. And I keep using the word institutional because when the fight against corruption is institutional, it doesn't matter what political party you belong to. It doesn't matter what ethnic tribe you belong to. It doesn't matter what religion you belong to. If you are guilty, if you also don't get the opportunity of getting to court by virtue of plea bargain, it must be made known that whoever has taken commonwealth of the people for personal use,
no matter your status,
no matter your status, ethnic affiliation or religion, must not have the opportunity to come out and occupy any political position, either elective or appointed anymore. What sense does it make? I've taken 100 million naira, I've returned 20, I've saved the remaining 80 for the next election. If you've taken money and it's been established either through the courts or through plea bargain, it doesn't matter where the process comes from. After all, the Constitution says in itself that you will not be able to occupy any elective position if you have been convicted of a criminal offense. So if you don't get to court by virtue of plea bargain, it doesn't excuse you from that fact.
So what I would just like to quickly add is that even our view of corruption is too nice. Corruption, people who have stolen money, what does that translate into? For me, it translates into deaths on our roads.
All right.
It means that the money you have stolen could have been used to fix the roads. So instead, people have died. You know, so we tend to think, oh, it's just money. It's not just money.
All right.
It is lives. You know, so we can't afford to be that, easy on corruption.
All right, now let's quickly move on. When the president signed the Not Too Young to Run bill into law on Thursday, May the 31st, he made a startling revelation. The age limits for senators and governors was not reduced as proposed by the sponsors of this bill. The explanation for the National Assembly, that the Senate President and the President have to be the same age, as the former can step into the shoes of the latter when the need arises, has done nothing to quell wagging tongues. Now, when this Not Too Young to Run bill came,
yes, you are younger.
So, what do you make of the fact that the age for Senate was not changed? It still remains the same. Nothing was done to that. And some have said that this bill, it's really, mixed reactions just follow this bill. So many questions attached to it.
Well, on the age of the Senate and that of the governors, which has not been reduced, and an explanation was given by the Senate, I think in the person of Senator Ike Kerimadu, that since the Senate President should encase the President and the Vice President for one reason or the other is not available, then it beckons on the Senate President to take leadership in the country. And so therefore, if the President and the Vice President is pegged at 35 years, then it is fine for
How valid is that explanation?
Well, for me, I think that my focus is not even the explanation. My focus is the fact that while we are so excited about this not too young to run bill, it's very important for us to emphasize that the bill is essential, but is not absolute in curing the problem of lack of sufficient representation or the growing of leadership in Nigeria. Because the reason is this. Now, if you look at the Nigerian population, the United Nations says that the median age of an African youth is 19.5 years old. Africa has the largest population of young people in the entire globe. So the African continent has over 75% of its population as youth population. Now, if you look at the average age of the 10 oldest African presidents, it sums up to be about 79 years old. So you can see the disparity. The youngest population in the entire globe is within African continent, but the oldest leadership within the entire globe is also existing in Africa. So let's narrow down to Nigeria now. And this is why, for me personally, I believe that this bill is essential. It is an access, but it's not the destination. And the Nigerian youth must wake up. Not only must the Nigerian youth wake up to hold accountable that there is a need for us to have youth in leadership, the Nigerian youths must wake up to hold accountable the political parties. The political parties owe it as a duty, not just to the youth, but also to women, that in Nigerian political system, the Nigerian political parties must make conscious efforts. They must make conscious institutional effort by saying that, look, if we have 100 elective positions and a political appointment, we must not say that, don't worry, we'll make it up in the political appointment. There is a recommendation that at least 35% of the government must be made of women.
Yes.
Now, the question then is that, why are we not having this? Why is the political party not breeding a new generation? And it goes back to the point that are political parties existing with ideologies?
All right.
Is there a value system within the political parties? We know what the Labour Party stands for in the UK. We know what the Conservative stands for in the UK. We know what the Republican stands for and the Democrat stands for in America. When it comes to issue of migration or tax or this, we know where everybody stands.
Yes, we know everybody stands.
What does the political party stand for in Nigeria?
All right, now let's quickly bring Remi in. Now, many believe that we run a system that accommodates majorly the rich, stupendously rich when it comes to politics. And so to vie for office, one has to have enough money. Now with this bill, can this bill address that for the youth? You have had an experience which we talked about before we came on the air. And so can this really address that?
I don't think so. I don't think that is the not too young to run bill per se that will address the issues, because if the young people swarm to the established political parties, they will still be required, you know, to come up with huge sums of money to be able to run, you know, for elections. But I'd like to say that, you know, I'm happy with this bill because it's about global trends. The trend in the world is for younger people to also be included in the governance of their countries. And indeed, Nigerian young people have demonstrated incredible savvy in different areas of endeavor. You know, so why should they not also bring all those skills and competences that they have into the political arena? That is why I believe they themselves are addressing this matter of the money.
But some have said that this is it mentioned. Prioritizing age over experience quickly?
Well, let me say this. The last 2015 election,
quickly, because
what was the cost of nomination form for the political parties? For presidency, you're looking about 22 million to 27 million. And we've dropped the age of presidential candidates to 35 now. How many Nigerians within that age bracket can afford it. And that's why the Electoral Act, the amendment proposed to the 2010 Electoral Act, to further drop the cost of nomination forms is very important. Because at the end of the day, when we look at the age landscape of the Nigerian leadership, you look at Obasanjo when he was in office. In 1999, he was 62 years old.
All right,
Yar'Adua was 56, Jonathan 54, and the current president 74.
All right, quickly, I'd like you to address the question I asked, prioritizing age over experience.
In the matter, I believe that while we support this not too young to run, you know, the passage of this bill, it's assent by the president. What is important for the country, however, is for us to have qualified, competent leadership. So it's not just about age. It is not just, one cannot emphasize that enough. What we want are people of integrity, people who know what they're doing, people who are able to give us the kind of leadership that we need at this time. So it's not like we are all just going to go and take the back seat, you know. So I'm not going to tell myself, oh, now Remy, you are too old, you know. Go, you don't have any space here. No.
But in terms of experience,
I agree. Experience counts.
Yes, but in terms of experience for the youths, let me just quickly add that the youths also have been a part of this political cycle for too long. If the sweat of the youths raised the leaders that are there today, if by the voice of the youth they are where they are today, if with the hands of the youth they built the dynasties and the empires that they built today, then if you've been using them as equipment and instrument of self-achievement, how come suddenly you think that we are inexperienced enough?
No. The road is different from when we are there.
Bring up
the
competent
there are two different things.
Exactly. Yes.
All right, I must say thank you for
much.
coming on the show. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Well, that's our package on today's edition of Standpoint. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can watch a repeat of this edition tomorrow by 7 a.m. I'm Veronica Danik Boy. Enjoy your weekend.